Alright, I'm back after about a month. Haven't made any videos on my YouTube page, but I've been working on a bunch of different projects, a couple of things that I've been writing that I'm hopefully going to publish under my real name, so unfortunately I can't share those with you on here, but I do have some things that I'm going to share with you. One of them is going to be, it's around here somewhere, it's The Authoritarian Personality. We're going to look at that book and we're going to compare it to another book that was written about 5 or 6 years before that. And my supposition is that one of these books represents the political plan for the post-war period and the other one represents the social plan. And The Authoritarian Personality represents the social plan. So we're going to go over that, but hopefully in the near future. But right now we're going to talk about the YouTube censorship issues. And I normally don't like to talk about current events. I don't like to talk about the news anymore because I followed the news closely for 10 or 15 years of my life. And then after my political awakening, I decided that kind of stuff is mind control, and that if you are always reacting to what's in the news, even if you're using better than normal news sources, right? So you've gotten away from the New York Times, the Washington Post, CNN, Fox News, you've gotten away from all that, but you're still in the news cycle. You're going to end up in one form or another being mind controlled because you're just reacting to things that the elite are coming up with. Even if the elite are coming up with false flags, you're going to be dealing with that kind of stuff all the time, and all of these emanations that come from the upper world that we don't really know what goes on up there, the kind of things that go on between Trump and his people and the globalists, so like this Zionist versus globalist conflict in United States foreign policy. We really don't know what's going on. And if we follow the news, we can kind of get some inklings of it, but that's probably not a good way to spend our time. So we're going to talk about this YouTube censorship thing just because it's a house cleaning issue. You and I and everybody else who's involved in this kind of stuff, we communicate with each other through this medium, through YouTube and these similar kinds of things. So to the degree that something is going to stop us from communicating with each other, we got to talk about it, or at least that's why I'm recording this right now. So you probably already know what happened. You know the facts. So I'm going to give you 3 opinions to go with those from people that I heard. The first one and the weakest reaction I thought to these events was that of Ryan Dawson. Ryan Dawson hates Zionism and the neoconservatives, and it's his personal mission to undermine their propaganda. And he does that very well, but a bunch of the other positions that he holds I completely disagree with. I couldn't disagree with him more. So he had I thought the weakest response, and you got to kind of feel bad for Ryan because God knows how many videos he had on his channel and how much he'd recorded in the struggle, and I guess they wiped out most of his YouTube channel. But his response was basically whining about how, well, you guys say you want to get rid of hate and dangerous ideologies, and that's my mission too, is what Ryan said. But instead you've targeted me and not the real haters and the real people who promote violence. And it should just be obvious to all of us by this point that our elite don't care about the law, they don't care about truth, and they don't care about justice. They are a power-hungry group of blood-soaked monsters. And the reason why we're dissidents at all is to try to get rid of them or to try to counteract their influence. And so therefore, the fact that we are dissidents implies that these are not just people. And they're not going to deal justly with us, regardless of what's written on paper or what they say or what they did yesterday. They're going to do something different. They're going to violate every rule and regulation. So, he's probably just mad. and not really thinking straight. But anyhow, we'll move on from him. Building on that, there's two other guys. One is Apollonian Germ, and the other one is Lennon McCarthy. And their responses to this, I thought, were much more sane and reasonable and helpful in trying to understand what's going on. So Apollonian Germ said, if you're posting on YouTube, you're posting behind enemy lines, because the people who work at YouTube and the people who own and operate YouTube are part of the same intellectual structure, and they're part of this public-private group, that includes members of the deep state and then certain cosmopolitan intellectual types who basically agree on everything. And then as we saw, well, we'll get to that in a second, but they don't agree with us, and these are part of the same group that we're working against. So they have no incentive to have you on YouTube. They don't want a diversity of opinion. They want you out of here and they want you gone. So the idea that they would tolerate our presence, is laughable anyway. And to the fact that that they've done it this long should be kind of surprising anyway, honestly. And the reason why they're getting rid of as many people as they can afford to get rid of is because it's their plans aren't working, and this stuff is becoming more and more popular over time. So completely agree with him there. What Lennon McCarthy said that I thought was instructive about how the process actually worked, how the censorship came about. He said the fake news industrial complex was lobbying itself for more censorship. So you've got a guy who works at Vox Media, who's a homosexual journalist. That's how he presents himself. That's his chosen occupation is not just being a journalist who's gay, but being a gay journalist. And then you got one of these alt-light conservative people, Steven Crowder, who, honestly, that whole worldview I don't think is helpful. I don't think it's useful. They can even say a lot of things that are true and accurate, but overall they've really got no solution whatsoever to any of these serious problems. So, and to a large extent, people who are in the alt-right or the conservative sphere, they prop up this system that has to go. So they're problems too a lot of the time. But see, you got squabbling between one of these mainstream journalists and one of these alt-right types, and then YouTube says, well, we'll make some concessions to the homosexual journalist by going to the ADL. And the ADL says, well, you should definitely remove all the Holocaust denial videos on YouTube. So I think it's kind of revealing about the ruling class, right? That these are the things that threaten them the most. We'll list them briefly. White nationalism, white separatism, Holocaust denial, and the conspiracy theory worldview and the conspiracy theory literature, particularly as it relates to false flags. So they really don't want you to talk about 9/11. They really don't want you to talk about Sandy Hook, and they don't want to talk about how you're white and that's a problem for the ruling class. They want fewer white people, or they want white people with restricted political and social roles, because apparently that's a problem for them, even though most of them look white or are supposed to be white, right? So I don't think I have too much more to say about this. As far as alternatives go, everybody who's got a YouTube channel with content on it that you value, you should make sure that you have your stuff completely archived and backed up. You can get archives of all of your YouTube videos that you've uploaded by going through Google Takeout. So you go through that and you request them to make you an archive of the videos you've uploaded to YouTube, and then you can just download them all. So do that if you haven't done it already. And then you got to find out what you're going to do with them. And I looked at RuTube, which is a Russian version of YouTube, and I looked at BitChute. RuTube has already blocked and removed one of my videos are pretty mild, right? I'm not fire breathing here. and they already blocked and removed one of my videos. So I find that very disconcerting, very shameful, to be honest. It didn't have any content that would even violate YouTube's ridiculously vague and unworkable user agreement, but they already took that down. So I'm thinking RooTube's not going to work for us. BitChute, on the other hand, is a peer-to-peer torrent, kind of like torrent client network for viewing videos. So your IP address is exposed. So if you're going to use BitChute, you're probably going to need to run a VPN while you do it, which is a pain and complicated, but that may be what everybody's got to do. So long story short, you got a couple of choices. You can either quit YouTube completely, which I don't think is a good idea, or you can behave like you're behind enemy lines, like Apollonian Germ said, and you can try to say as much as you can for as long as you can to help the largest number of people. And I think that that's the only reasonable goal. But make sure you got all your stuff backed up, and probably for a change, just go out into the regular general public too, right? And push some of these talking points with people, because I myself have found over time that anti-democratic politics is not really meeting the brick wall that it used to. You start talking about how democracy is fundamentally flawed and it's not the God that everybody always thought it was, not really meeting the same kind of resistance anymore, because people living through this Trump presidency have seen how broken all this stuff is. So thank you for your time, and I hope to be talking to you again soon.